All right, guys, I'm going to turn these into commentary videos because I shot this entire camp last year without audio because I had no expectation of using this footage for anything other than background footage for instructional videos, and shot it all in 120 frames to have good slow motion footage. So you're going to have to listen to me talk and tell you what's going on here, and hopefully you find that at least slightly interesting. So because all of our lifters are remote now, Aimee and I bring out the team once or twice a year and have a week-long camp, which allows us, of course, to coach them in person, and then it gives them a chance to train in that atmosphere and, see their best buddies and all that fun stuff. So we've got people from Norway, Estonia, Canada, and the good old US at this camp, and I'm probably forgetting someone too. But morning sessions are typically technique oriented. So, in a normal program, all of these lifters have their own specific technique work. And a lot of the times, though, in the camp, I will give them all the same each day, or at least very similar, because it makes it easier for me to keep track of what's going on. I'm already running around like a maniac trying to pay attention to 10 lifters. So this helps a little bit. And it's not like these exercises are not good for all of them anyway. But those warm up / technique / primer type exercises are going to be specific to the afternoon workout they have that day. So obviously, as you can guess, this was a snatch day for pretty much everybody. So a lot of work on turnover, a lot of work on, quick finish, quick change of direction with these right here that you're looking at. The muscle snatch, the power position snatch, power snatch, whatever, are big favorites of mine, because they are relatively simple, but they also really get people moving well and quickly and confidently, and practicing and learning those really good mechanics that will then transfer over into snatches so that they're not, taking their sweet time moving down under a lift. All right, afternoon session, the main session. Most of my lifters had squats at the start, which is something I do regularly if we are in a phase. Early on in a cycle, I want to really be pushing that leg strength. And that is a really simple way to do it without even changing anything else necessarily. Just because they have more energy, they have more focus doing whatever they're doing first. You'll see Megan here, Elisa, Nadia, and Nairobi all had 10s this day, which is not something I do a ton. But I definitely do have lifters do 10s at least for, 3 to 4 weeks a year, typically at the most. But depends, some of them respond really well to them. So if that's the case, I'm going to do it more. Tina here got lucky and just had front squat triples. So she was on a very different program. So the girls I mentioned first, here's one of them again, Nadia, that had 10s. They're all on a very similar cycle. So the same basic structure, and then the variants. So like they'll have slightly different snatch variations. They'll have different pulling variations, but it's that same basic schedule and structure that then gets modified, depending on what they need to work on. So Piper here was on a different program. I think she was on one more similar to what Tina and Ronya were doing with the triples that you just saw. And here you go. This is why I shot everything in 120 frames, so I could have nice quality slow motion footage. By the way, shooting in this garage, especially with the doors open, is a nightmare because you constantly have to adjust for exposure, and especially when you're facing those doors, everything outside is just completely blown out in order to get a lifter actually exposed well. So they're all lifting back to back for 2 hours at a time, and I'm like scrambling around trying to change the ISO on the camera quickly enough to get it right before they start a lift. So this is Adela, and actually she just transitioned into rowing and actually won the indoor world championships just like 2 weeks ago in the 1,000 meter. She just had too many kind of pre-existing injuries and issues to make weightlifting viable long term, even though she had some great potential. But despite the fact that she is actually 6 feet tall, not exactly the greatest proportions for weightlifting unless you're actually a super heavy, like a true super heavy, which she, of course, is not. Nairobi this week, unfortunately, was having some back and kind of hip issues, which is why we moved her to the blocks. She normally would have been snatching from the floor for doubles, but obviously the blocks allow us to kind of take a little bit more stress off the hip and back. Ronya here, along with Tina, sitting on the bench. They're my two Norwegian lifters, and they were both right at the very beginning of a training cycle. So, they're doing triples in the snatch and clean and jerk, at not particularly heavy weights. So it's always really tricky to time camps for a lot of reasons. A lot of the time Aimee and I are traveling, especially Aimee these days, for competition. And then, of course, we have lifters from, 7 or 8 different countries, which means their competition schedules are different. So trying to find a time where people are in, a phase of training where coming to a camp would be more fun, like they get to lift heavy, but also it isn't too close to a competition for them to travel and all those things. It's really impossible. So the last 2 years we did a camp in the winter, which is really hard because I might show it during this video series, but our driveway is not exactly the best thing to be on in the winter. So the access was hard, and we decided we really needed to do it in summer. So this was mid-August, I think, which is great because then we can have the doors open instead of having them closed. People aren't freezing to death. The access is easy. They don't get their flights canceled and get, stuck at SFO for 24 hours and stuff like that, like we've had happen in the past. We actually had a winter camp. I think it was the last year camp, where they couldn't get down the driveway in a car one of the days. So they were actually sliding down. Fortunately, no one died or had any serious injuries from that. But it makes it interesting. But summer gives us a lot more options, and they have a lot more options of stuff they can do. Like on their Thursday day off, they can go cruise around and see what's going on. So again, here, Ronya, snatch triples. She's been dealing with some injuries. She just actually had a knee surgery. God, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. So real slowly trying to come back from that. She's been dealing with that knee problem for like almost 2 years on and off. So it's been a struggle to keep her healthy and training consistently. But she just kind of finished out her junior career and is now going into the senior category. So not a great time to be out for a surgery, but I'm not scared. She'll be back. And Tina here actually has been dealing with some injuries and some health stuff too this past year. And she's finally kind of on the mend and coming back. So she was supposed to go to the European Championships in April, but she decided to withdraw because she didn't feel like she'd be able to be ready and was a cool enough person to not take a spot for another lifter who could have been in better shape, which, not all athletes are willing to do. They'll take that spot even if they know they're not going to be ready because they don't want anyone else to have it. So my hat's off to her for that decision. Ronya is one of those lifters that I post who lifts her feet and stomps a lot. And, people always have questions about that. But if you actually watch her, I don't know if there's any more slow-mo clips of her to follow, but if you actually watch her timing is impeccable. So she is still driving into the floor until just after she begins pulling under, which is the ideal timing. So she is not lifting her feet until safely after all of that upward bar acceleration from the second pull has been completed. So any further connection to the floor isn't accomplishing anything. It's actually potentially preventing good acceleration under. So keep that in mind when you're freaking out about someone stomping their feet aggressively. I think she's the biggest stomper I have these days, but she does it very well. It obviously can create a lot of problems, but any style of anything can create problems if you don't do it well. And I think people tend to forget that very easily. They get caught up in, whatever the most recent thing they see on Instagram and whatever the most recent expert has said as being the one true way. And that's all nonsense. There is no one true way. If there were one true way, we would see it in every lifter at the highest levels of competition. And if you think all of those lifters lift the same, I don't know what you're looking at, but it's not those lifters. So keep in mind that there are a lot of variations in kind of technical styles and executions that are not necessarily problems, right? Sometimes there are problems. There are plenty of elite lifters who have bad habits, right? They are not perfect. There's a lot of reasons that a coach and a lifter would not correct something like that. Primarily that the time and effort and the diminishment of performance that would be required to make that change is not worth the potential benefit. So they kind of just let those things go. In other cases, it is an intentional choice, and it's because that is what works best for that lifter. And that does not necessarily work better or best for anyone else. That could be very specific to that one athlete. That was 2 really good saves in a row by Megan, by the way. Nadia here, you'll see in a minute, does a complex. Oh yeah, right here. So a jump, then a pull, then a snatch, because she has a lot of power at the hip, but she forgets that she has legs too, which is crazy because her legs are like 90% of her body. Sorry, Nadia. Not the ideal. She was a figure skater prior to being a weightlifter. So great proportions for that. Not ideal for weightlifting, but this is one of the ways that we address that need for more leg pushes, that we are constantly finding ways to get her to feel that drive. Elisa here had just had a shoulder surgery. I don't remember. A few months prior to this camp, which is why she's not actually doing any real snatching. She was just kind of doing those really lightweight, power snatches, muscle snatches and stuff earlier in the day. And she does, I think, only some real light jerk stuff this week. No real jerks, for the same reason, that shoulder surgery. But she's gotten a lot better. She's coming along. She's not 100% yet, obviously, but she'll be competing at the European Championships in April. As her first like real meet back following that surgery. So I am optimistic. She's been chugging along, and all of my lifters are very hard workers, but she definitely is up there in the extreme diligence, work ethic realm. And Megan, we've been working on some big changes in her technically. Recently, I inherited her from another coach. Most of my athletes came from other coaches. Piper's not one of them here, but so it's always tricky because you see things that you're like, hey, that's not ideal. We don't want to do that. But like I was saying earlier, you have to ask yourself, is it worth taking potentially steps back to correct this thing, or is it something that we can just work around? And Megan's issues were numerous and serious enough that we took advantage of her having some back issues that were related to some of those issues, needing to back off for a while. We took advantage of that opportunity to kind of start trying to rebuild her positions and her movement, and even like the way she understands what is happening in the lifts, to kind of solve those problems as much as we can. So that's been nice progress to see happening. I don't know what she's laughing at. Probably the fact that she almost just fell over. Piper just competed at the Arnold last weekend, had a rough time. She had some issues the weeks leading into it and was basically like blacking out during every competition attempt. She managed to pull out lifts, and unfortunately, she made that youth world team, and then got bumped by somebody. She got bumped by the one person she could have gotten bumped by. And you know, it's one of those things where we did as much as we could that day in the circumstances because she was kind of messed up, and she was capable of so much more. And had she done what we had planned, or even quite a bit less than we had planned, she would have moved up like 4 spots in the ranking. So it's weightlifting, man. It's like sometimes the most soul crushing thing on earth, especially because the opportunities you have are so few and far between. Like if you're trying to qualify for a team, you get 1 shot a year basically, and if you don't make it, especially when it's from things that are outside your control, it's incredibly discouraging and heartbreaking. So you kind of have to learn how to roll with it, and um, keep a long-term perspective and recognize that most of the time it's not your last opportunity to do something. But sometimes it is, unfortunately. So that's always the worst, when it's, your last chance to make a team, your last chance to medal at something, or whatever the case is. Adela here, we're doing kind of a hybrid, an RDL with a pull finish. She kind of, the reason that she went over to rowing is one of her main things was she has ongoing hip issues. So we had to really cut back on how much pulling she was doing from the floor. And this is a way where we can get a bunch of good strength training around the hip and for the back and everything, but then also keep her in touch with that pulling motion, and learning how to guide the bar up along the body rather than bouncing it, and keeping it close before and after contact, all that good stuff. And you'll see a lot of these lifters here are doing snatch deadlifts rather than pulls, and that is again because they are really early in a training cycle. So primarily we're working on kind of developing the most basic strength qualities and positions and all that kind of stuff, and we'll begin transitioning into more pulls. The deadlifts will get dropped, and so we move more technique and speed dependent. And Elisa here, you'll see, is doing slow eccentrics on the last rep, again, just as a way to really strengthen and reinforce the posture and the strength in the positions that we want. So you build that base early on in a training cycle, and then as that cycle goes, you are moving more and more into competition lift specific work, but you have that base of strength and position and postural control and awareness that transfers well into it. And then, of course, Maddie was the only one who was squatting at the end instead of the beginning on this day. So we'll say goodbye on this last rep. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you watching. Tell all your friends. YouTube is brutal, and I've been doing a bad job keeping up with it, so I have not been doing well lately. So I'll see you next time. Hopefully there is a next time. You guys like this enough.